Okay, what I did was I put this motor up on a transmission jack that I had, and just so that way I can move it around if I need to rotate it. I'm going to try this out, see if this will work. It looks like it's a pretty sturdy work area here, and raised it up on my motorcycle lift so that way it'll be hopefully at a better height to work on. So, okay, the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to remove the chain tensioner. And how the chain tensioner works is you have a little dial over here that you can move to tighten and loosen the chain tensioner when you go to set it back up. But what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to hold this set screw in place and loosen the nut up on it. And then we can, that adjusts and loosens your chain tension there. It's a 12 millimeter on the nut. Then we're going to take these two 10 millimeter bolts out here, and I've already broken them loose, but we're going to remove the chain tensioner. And I have had this out before because the original chain tensioner I had had an O-ring that was leaking on it. And this was my first oil leak that I discovered, was on this part here, and I couldn't find the proper O-rings for it anywhere, and I'm not sure if it's in that gasket set or not, and I didn't want to buy a whole gasket set. I wound up finding a used tensioner online pretty cheap, and so I just bought that instead. And the other tensioner, I didn't like the way it felt. It almost felt like it was locked up or bad, so replaced it with this one, and that solved the oil leak from this section, but didn't solve it the second oil leak that developed. Alright, so let's see if we can get this off. Get it out of the way. I'll show you how it works when I get it out here. Alright. So here's your chain tensioner. You can turn this dial over here, and if I remember correctly, push it down as you turn that dial, yeah, and then you lock it in when you're installing it, and then once you have it installed, you release the lock nut here, which lets the spring come out and adds the tension to the chain. So we'll go over that again when we set this all back up. So that's the first step we're going to do, is remove the chain tensioner there. Okay, what I did next was I broke loose the valve cover gasket bolts. It doesn't say anything in the book about doing this in any certain pattern to take it off, but I went ahead and used the crisscross pattern on all the bolts instead of just loosening up one side at a time or going right down the line, just to be just in case. Just wanted to be careful. I think I've got them all broken loose now, so we'll see about popping this valve cover. Alright, I finally got the valve cover broken loose. What I had to do is go around it with a putty knife and kind of get this gasket to break loose. It was on there really good. So now we got the valve cover off. So now, okay, I checked all the clearances on the tappets, and they are all well within spec. This motor is so tight still from being so new, that they're all good. So we're going to start taking the camshafts out. That's going to be the next step. So we'll move on to taking those out and getting ready to take the head off. Okay, now what I did was I broke all the bolts loose in a diagonal pattern, kind of crisscross. I'm going to take out the exhaust cam first, and then we'll move, and it says in the book to clamp this cam down with a pair of vice grips. So that's what I did, and we're going to take these 4 or 8 bolts out. Okay, now that I had those loose, I lifted up this little chain guide here and was able to pull the cam loose, and let's just remove this chain guide. It's the guide that sits in there. Put it here with the cam caps, and then this cam rotates out. I'm just going to put this hammer here to hold that chain in place. One thing I noticed on these cams, on the left side the cam is solid, and on the right side it has a little notch, and that's what you use later to retime the motor. I hope that's in, yeah, I hope you can see it on there. But so that's what you will use later to put the motor back in time. Alright, so now I'm going to do the same thing on the other 8 bolts. I'm going to break those loose in a diagonal pattern, and then we'll pull those out. I've got to clamp the cam down again. So all I was doing is over here on this side of the cam, well actually on both sides on this one, you can, either side you can clamp it down, and you don't have to clamp it down really tight. You just want it to kind of stay in place while you're breaking all these bolts loose. See, that side doesn't. So we'll just have to find the spot to clamp down. Yep, that's not got it. Tighten it up just a little bit. So there, just to kind of hold it in place, and then we'll break these bolts loose. Let's start on this one. There's not very much torque on these, or not supposed to be anyhow. I think they're only torqued down to like 8 foot-pounds. It's at a weird angle to grab a hold because it wants to rotate on this cart. That was the only thing I was worried about on this cart.
With it being on wheels, it wants to roll. I just slipped out. Slipped the last one loose. That was weird.
And then just hold it. They're all broken loose now. So I'm just going to use this T-handle and pop these off. And we're just going to use the little screwdriver here just to kind of vibrate. I'm not prying, I'm just kind of popping around on these just to kind of pop them up because they're sitting on a dowel pin. I'm just working them up out of the way. Okay, what I have here is just a little plastic interior tool for a car to remove the interior and use that to pop up the one side, and it came right up, and that way it's pretty soft and not causing any issues or damaging anything. There we go, just a little slight pop up there. Get it under and kind of work it up off that dowel guide there. You don't want to go in there very far and hit the cam, except just working it up a little bit to get it off the base of the head. Let's get that out of the way. There we go. As you can see, there's a little dowel that sits over here to hold those in. And I think one just fell out. I thought the other ones only had one in it. This one had two. Alright. So I got those out of the way. I'm going to release this. And now we can remove this cam as well. Alright. So now we're going to work on getting the head bolts all broken loose and get this head off. Alright, so now I'm going to get ready to remove the head here. And I've just had the spark plugs just sitting in here just to keep junk from falling down in it. Like I said, I'm going to have to take this off and clean it because we've got pieces of the gasket all inside. So we're going to clean that up real good. Alright, so I'm going to move on to the next step here. Well, I just noticed this when I was looking at it. We've got one of these tappet shims is broken right in half, which is strange because, you know, like I said, this motor was running great, no issues at all. And it's strange that this one is broken right in half, so that's something we're going to have to order. Alright, what we have to do now is break the 12 bolts loose that are in here to hold the head on. There's 3 10mm, one right here, one down under here, one on this side, and the other 12 or 14mm. And so we have to break those all off. And the head is numbered. It has the sequence that you go to remove these. Like 1 is here, 2 is over here. There's little numbers inside. Then 3, then 4, and then down inside of here there's 5 down there, 6, 7, 8, and then 9, 10, 11, and 12. So we're going to break all those loose in the order that they have listed here, and I'm not going to record as I'm doing that, but I'll come back when I've got them all done. Okay, I have all these bolts broken loose, so now, and loosen them up quite a bit. So I'm going to pull these off and just put them in my little tray here to keep track of them. Alright, so that's the same thing. I'm going to go through all these and take them out, so I'm just going to pause it. Okay, just a note here, all the inner bolts here all have thick washers on them, but then the little cap nuts on the corners, they do not have any washers on them, so just don't want you, I don't want to get to that point of putting this back together and think that I had lost washers. So just for my reference and just to let you know that these 4 on the outside do not have washers on them. Okay, I was a little bit wrong when I told you that those didn't have washers on those four corners. They do. They have little brass washers. So I was wrong. They weren't magnetic like the other ones were. So they appear to be brass. And there's four of them. Alright, so now that I have all that broken loose, the head's ready to come off. I kind of tapped it a little bit with a rubber mallet and broke it loose. Seems to be ready to come out, and I just dropped my chain, which I didn't want to do. So I'm going to have to fish that out first, and I was going to get a piece of rope or something to tie around it. So be right back. Okay, so now I'm going to try to pull this head, see if we can get this to come off. Hopefully it comes off easily. We'll have to fish the chain through. I'm going to pull this guide out of the way. I'm on chain still. Didn't want to do that, but get the guide out of the way. Alright, so we're getting closer to the problem. Alright, so here's our pistons. Get the head off with the valves. I think this guide has a get our chain here. I believe there's a, yeah, it looks like a one bolt down in here, and I think that's what holds this chain tensioner in place. So, alright, so I'm going to take a look at the book, see what the next steps are to do. We've got, should have everything pretty much broken loose, and it should come out. Like I said, I see one bolt down in here, which I'm pretty sure that's the last bolt holding the cylinder walls on. I see a screw way down there in the bottom, but I think that's just holding the where the chain is held on. Maybe the chain tensioner, I'm not sure. I'm going to look into that. So yeah, so it's coming along. From what I can see right here, just a quick glance at it without shining a flashlight down in it, but all the cylinder walls look great, which is not surprising with how little bit of mileage it is on this bike. So I'm going to get in there. We're going to have to pop this cylinder, the cylinder off, and that'll expose the pistons, but so far everything looks really good on this motor. So we're going to continue on. Okay, I was working at getting the head off here, and it was fighting me, and then I got it to break loose and started pulling it off and couldn't stop, so didn't get anything on video of getting the head off. But here's what I have to deal with. There's a ton of dirt and stuff that fell down in this block, which does not make me happy right now. I'm not sure how I'm going to get all that out. I wasn't planning on going any further than this, but as you can see right here, the gasket material just kind of came apart. I think this was the side that was leaking really bad, and yeah, you can see there's a rip in this gasket here. I don't know if that's from when I was taking it off, but I'm assuming that it's the seals around this base part of the gasket is what the main problem was. I'm not sure if this gasket is factory or if maybe this has been apart at some point in time, but I'm going to clean this up and see what we can do about getting ready to put it back together. The pistons look okay, rings look alright. Doesn't look like I broke anything taking it off. It's just going to be fun getting back together, and I want to get this cleaned out as much as possible because I'm not planning on tearing anything else apart on this thing. So what may happen is when I get this thing together, I'm going to clean out as much debris out of here as I can. And what I'm doing now is going ahead and pulling off the pistons. I'm going to go ahead and remove those so I can clean this gasket surface well. I've already pulled 2 of the pistons out, and what I was doing was using a pair of little needle nose pliers to pull out the spring. So I'd remove the spring clip, the little spring clip there, then use a little socket, and then just press the wrist pin through. Let's see if I might have to lower this. And I want to make sure that I'm not on the clip on the other side, so I don't damage that clip or pressing against it. I think I'm going to have to rotate this motor over a little bit to get this. It's coming. So that's what I'm doing now. Just so I want to get this gasket surface all nice and clean here, so I don't have any leaks. I don't want to have to do this again. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the piston. I'm going to rotate the motor a little more to get a little better grip on this piston. Let's see here. So there we go. And make sure the chain is not getting knotted up. Keep that out. And let's see if we can press these pistons. It's bad enough trying to work around these studs, trying to clean this up, but then to work around the pistons too. I just decided to go ahead and pull them, and I may go ahead and just clean them up while I got them out. It's kind of a pain to get in here. I should have probably pushed the pin out the other way, but this one's kind of stuck a little bit. I really don't want to use any brute force on it, but I will tap it a little bit here. Alright, I'm going to see if I can get, I think I have a long extension, might be able to put on to get a little bit better grip on this. Okay, so what I did was I just put this extension through just so I could reach and get around these studs, and just pushed in on that wrist pin and got the piston out. And I labeled all my pistons on top. This is number 1, and I'm going to sit here, and they all have an arrow on the front of them which points towards the front part of the motor. So that's nice to set that aside. And I'm going to rotate the motor back over, get that other cylinder or other piston up, and do the same thing with it. Okay, well, I think I may have found where the leak was on this bike once I was cleaning the gasket off. Looks like somebody's had this head off before, and there's a notch right here where it looks like somebody gouged it with something. I don't know if it's picking it up on the camera, but I'm going to try to file this flat so we can hopefully get rid of where it was leaking. But this is where it was leaking. It was coming out of here, leaking down. So, like I said, I don't know if this is focusing. I know it's not now. But, you know, that seems to be where the leak was. I don't know if I can get it, but so I'm going to clean this up, try to file it down flat. Okay, I did a little bit of filing on that, just enough to knock that groove off, so it's now smooth. It's not sticking up in the air, so I think we're probably going to be good there. Okay, it's actually been a few weeks since I've done anything to this. I think I may have found where the leak was on this bike once I was cleaning the gasket off. Looks like somebody's had this head off before, and there's a notch right here where it looks like somebody gouged it with something. I don't know if it's picking it up on the camera, but I'm going to try to file this flat so we can hopefully get rid of where it was leaking. Okay, it's actually been a few weeks since I've done anything to this. I don't know how I'm going to break this video up, if I'm going to do one long video or break it down into shorter ones, but did get some time today I pulled the buckets out, started to clean the gasket off the top of this head. Like I said, I went ahead and pulled the buckets out. What I did was I numbered these 1 through 4. I've got the exhaust and the intake ones out. I did find these 4 little washers that were on the bottom of the head that need to go back on, so I have to remember to put those back in once we go to put this motor back together. So I haven't really done a whole lot lately. I've been just really crazy with family stuff and work. So just trying to get back on this. Want to get this finished up, and unfortunately going to be out of town for a week or so, so I won't be able to do much then, but trying to get little pieces of it done, trying to get all this cleaned up. This gasket material that they use on here, I guess the type of sealant that they use between the gasket has just made removing all these gasket parts just crazy rough. A lot of cleaning up to do on these. So I'm going to work on this one, and let's see, do I have something else I wanted to show? Okay, here's the other thing I was going to show you. This is the valve cover itself, and I was just going to take all these bolts out so I could flip this over and clean the gasket off the bottom, but what I did notice was that these bolts are different sizes. Like this particular bolt here is longer than the bolt on the inside. Now, but I don't think it's consistent because this bolt is shorter here. So I'm thinking that the 4 corners are probably the longer bolts, but that's not true either because that one's shorter. And I pulled this off and kept all the bolts in the same spot. So I don't know if the manual will say anything about what bolts go where, but what I'm going to do is I've got a cardboard box. I'm going to turn that over, label it 1 through 4. Okay, this is just what I've done in a small box, just so I can keep them all straight.